Good morning, Stampers. Today we're going to be making a card that is square. Vicki Burdick, who is a wonderful artist who has a blog on the internet, does a lot of beautiful square cards. I don't make very many of these, but I thought that this type of paper and this particular stamp set looks really nice with a square card. So I thought today we'd make one. So we're going to start off with our cardstock, which is River Rock, which is going to be our card base. And it is a 5.5 inch square. So that's going to take one sheet of cardstock in order to make this card. Now you're going to be able to use your scraps to do your little ribbon piece here that's made with the new ribbon punch, border punch. You can see that. It has a really unique little design. And then your rest of your scrap will be used to make your little banner here that's attached, that's loose on one end. Okay, our designer series paper we're using today is called Botanical Gazette. So we're going to start with that piece, which is a 5-inch square piece of designer series paper. Now the piece that I'm using is the one that has the little polka dots in the back with the dark Night of Navy bees on it. It didn't have enough Marina Mist in it color to suit me, so I rolled it with Marina Mist in my wheel stamp. That is the blooms, and it's just little tiny little flowers. You can see the little flowers here in the design. You could use really anything. I just used this one because it was flowers, and that's what I was putting on it. And I rolled it with Marina Mist across my paper twice. So I'm going to go ahead and attach that now to my piece of Marina Mist cardstock, which is 5 1/4 square. Like I said earlier, everything is square. So we're just going to put that on with a little bit of snail. So we're just going to go ahead and mount that. Now we're ready to go ahead and mount this to the front of our piece of cardstock. And this piece is 5.5 by your 11 inches, and it's been scored at 5.5. Okay, so when we're ready to mount this, and I'm mounting it this way, we want to go ahead and put our piece of ribbon down one side right here. That's going to take about 7 inches of the striped grosgrain, which is one of my wonderful new favorites that Stampin' Up has now in so many of the colors. Like I said, that's going to take about 7 inches or less to wrap around the card. You want to make sure you have a good overlap on the back. You don't want it coming undone. And we want to put that, as you can see here, I've put it about a 1/2 inch over on my actual designer paper. So it's going to go right about there. And what I do is I usually put just a little bit of snail on a spot that's not going to have like anything wrapped around it. Like this will be wrapped around the bow, will be adhered there. But we're going to tape it down up here at the top just so it'll stay in place while we turn it over. And then just put some snail back there to hold it down. And if you like, because sometimes when you're mounting a card like this, where the ribbon is not going to be very secure, so it might be a good idea to use just a little bit of sticky strip, or you can put just a little bit of score pal tape right over that part. That way you're sure that it's going to hold down. Okay, and the rest of it can be done with just your snail adhesive. It is just a greeting card, and unless it's a card, and I'm going to put some across the center again, that people are going to say forever and ever and ever, snail usually is a good adhesive just to use. If it's something that you think someone might want to take apart and put in a frame that you've done a piece of artwork on, I would suggest always using something like sticky strip or score pal tape to hold it in place. That way you know it's not going to come apart. Okay, so there's our card base. And now we're ready to decorate and do our artwork. I have used a piece of Naturals White, which has a little bit of flecks in it. You can see it's not just pure white. It's a little bit thicker than like Whisper White. And it has a look of texture even though it is very smooth. So what we're going to do is we're going to stamp our images on this and color it with our markers. And we're going to use our Marina Mist marker, our River Rock, our daffodil, or any yellow, it really doesn't matter. The background of the designer series paper is yellow, but it really looks more like River Rock because it's very pale. We're going to use our Espresso for our little bee and our Pear Pizzazz for our leaves. And we're using the Summer stamp set, which is in the Celebration catalog. It's great. It's got some of the cutest little flowers and stems that can make quick little cards. Very easy to color in or paint in with your aqua painter. I actually did it also on watercolor paper. You could use watercolor paper and use your aqua painter. Gives it a nice soft effect. As you can see, the colors are a little bit different because they're more muted. But today we're going to be using this with our markers. I've already mounted my flowers stems that has the leaves on one side of my block, and my little bee that I want to show, and my flower bunch on the back side of the box. So I don't have to keep getting out a different block and cleaning my stamps before I continue. And I went ahead and just mounted my little bee there because he's so tiny that when I stamp this, it'll all get stamped at one time. Now we're going to stamp that background on our piece of cardstock that I've cut at 4 1/4 by 5 1/4. But we're going to trim that down once we get our image stamped. But I like to stamp things first before I trim, just in case it doesn't turn out quite the way I expect it. So the first little bloom I'm going to put kind of tall. It's going to be the tallest one. And you can see that my stamp's not quite put on straight. You can be a little bit more accurate with that if you want. And then my next one I'm going to bring down. And then the next one I'm going to bring back up, but not as high as the first one. Okay, and what I want to make sure is that my stamping that I do here fits within a 3-inch spot, because I'm going to end up cutting this piece of paper in a 3-inch square. So I'm just going to measure that to make sure it's fitting into the 3-inch block, and it is. Okay, and then we want to stamp our flower buds. And the way I did mine, because I got my little bee there, I want one of them with a little bee down here, so I'm going to turn it so the little bee is down here. And then I'm going to turn this one a little bit more like this, so the bee's kind of in the middle, like that. And then my next one, I'll put it so that the bee is at the top. Okay, just like so. Now I want to stamp off just flower blooms up here on the rest of my little edge of my paper, because I'm going to actually cut my blooms out. It doesn't matter about the bee. He cannot get stamped this time. So he's just gotten stamped off the paper. Okay, so now I've got my stems and my blooms, and I'm really ready to color them in. Okay, I'm going to start with my yellow centers, because when you start coloring in with your blue pen, you don't want to pick up any of the yellow on your blue marker. The blue on your yellow marker, excuse me, because that will make your yellow marker dirty. So I do the yellow or the lighter colors first. That way you don't mess up your light color markers. And then we're just going to use the brush tip and color in the blue. Okay, and we're using the River Rock marker to make these little circles that are out here, these little buds. And the only reason I use that there instead of green is just to tie in the color of the River Rock background paper to kind of give it a little bit different look. Now we're going to use our green Pear Pizzazz pen, and we're just going to do the leaves, and you want to do them very lightly so that it's sort of like a watercolor. You know, the way I say, less is always more. And just use a light touch there with your brush tip. And then we're going to use our daffodil again, or you can use any yellow, and just going to put a little bit of color on our bees. And I used the River Rock to do their little wings. Once again, just to tie in that color. And then you can go back over your little bee with your sharp tip of your Espresso and just highlight those lines. I guess because little bees are supposed to have stripes on them. Okay, now our flowers, because we're going to cut them out and stick them on here, this needs some color underneath here. So I'm just going to use a sponge dauber and my Marina Mist ink pad. And I'm just going to daub a little color over those blooms so that when you see them underneath there, they won't just be stark white. Okay, just like that. That's really cute in itself if you want to just do your flowers that way. They have a real cute aspect that way. Okay, now we're going to want to trim this piece of paper to trim out our design to a 3-inch square. Okay, now I've trimmed my artwork down to a 3-inch square. You see it just barely fits in there. And I'm going to do a little, just a teeny bit of shading around the edges. I don't always do this, but for this card it kind of looks a little cute because it kind of brings in the blue a little bit more. Just going to use my same dauber I used before. Now we're going to take our scissor snips and we're just going to cut out each one of these little blooms. And you don't want to like be really precise, but you do want to kind of try to make the edges a little rounded around the blooms. Okay, and now once you get your little blooms all trimmed out, these are going to be adhered with a, so now we want to mount our artwork to our other square piece of Marina Mist, which is 3 1/4 square. This will leave you a nice little 1/8-inch border all the way around. And once again, we're just going to use a little bit of snail. We're going to lay that to the side now. We're going to use one of our scraps from our River Rock paper that we trimmed because it took a whole sheet to make this card, but we have 3 inches on the side that we don't need. So I'm going to use a piece cut at 1 inch, and I'm just going to use the full length of it here, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment and cut it to the length that I want. And for this particular card, I'm going to use the sentiment that says birthday wishes, that comes from the Bring on the Cake stamp set, which has a lot of great birthday sentiments in it. And we're going to just be using, I'm using the clear stamp. So you see I've got my stamps mounted there, and this is birthday wishes, and I'm just going to stamp it in the Marina Mist onto this River Rock cardstock. Okay, now we're just going to trim off our banner. I'm going to leave enough room right here on the side that I can put 3 little pearls, and I'm going to trim the end in a fishtail, just like that. And I'm going to kind of bend it because it's going to be like a little banner. It's not going to be attached on both ends. Okay, now we have our, still have another piece of scrap here for us to use with our, but this lines up just the way all Stampin' Up! Punches do. You punch it, line it up with your little silver grid on the sides. We don't need it just a little bit, and you can see I didn't overlap in the right place there. But I'm going to cut it off on right with the punch, and it should come out just right for our artwork. Now we're just going to put this across the bottom like that. It's sort of like grass, and we're just going to trim that off and put that on the back with a little bit of snail. It doesn't, just, you know, be careful getting it over the edges. It does have little holes, and we're just going to put that across the bottom like grass right there. So that gives us a nice little tie-in with our River Rock here, our River Rock card, our River Rock on our bees, and our River Rock buds that are on our little flowers we cut out to tie all those colors in. Okay, now we're ready to make our bow.